Well, it's 7:30, so we shall begin. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the House District 112 Candidate Forum hosted by the East Cooper Democrats and the Charleston County Democrat Party. And I want to welcome our candidates, Daniel Brownstein and David Quick, and thank them for joining us so that our members can hear from them. Did want to plug a good resource for everyone, Vote Blue SC. If you are interested in voting absentee, it is a great resource that the county party has put together, Vote Blue SC. So a little bit for those of you who are joining us for this portion of the forum, we the way we will do this, Towner McGill, one of the members of our leadership team, and myself, Kelly Gorby, we are going to be moderating. The format will be a 2-minute opening. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and then we will go through some questions. We will rotate back and forth, which candidate starts first, and then we will do a 2-minute closing. So we're going to start in alphabetical order. And so Daniel, I believe that would be you starting with your 2-minute opening.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be with you, and thank you for the East Cooper Democrats for sponsoring this forum. I think it's a really valuable way to get to know the different candidates that are running. I'm Daniel Brownstein. I'm 38 years old, making me the youngest candidate on either side of the ticket. I'm married to my wife, Pamela, and I have 2 children, Wolf and Selah, who attend Whitesides Elementary. Like my opponent, I started out as a newspaper reporter, and that's actually what brought me to South Carolina in the first place. After a few years, I got married and I joined the solicitor's office, which is our version of a prosecutor here in South Carolina. And we served a 5-county area just south of Charleston that's sort of clustered around Beaufort. And while I was there, I was very instrumental in making some innovations to our local criminal justice system. We created a violence against women prosecution team that operated in some of South Carolina's poorest counties. We created a drug court. We did a teen court to try to address the underlying reasons that teenagers were starting to break the law. In 2012, I was very involved in lobbying the legislature for our anti-human trafficking law that was signed by the governor. In 2016, I was the author of the solicitor's budget request on behalf of all solicitors statewide, and we were able to add 104 prosecutors. Most notably, prior to that, some counties didn't even have a full-time prosecutor. So now that's not the case. Every single county has a prosecutor, and that's done a tremendous job in cutting down on the case backlogs that we were experiencing. About 5 years ago, I moved to Mount Pleasant to work for a local law firm here in town, Richardson Patrick. I've served on the Charleston County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council for 2 years, and that was a body that is meant to change the way that we utilize our county jails. And I've also served on the board of the South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault for the past 4 years.
All right, thank you. And next we toss it to David Quick for the opening statement.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see all the familiar faces. I've gotten to know you guys really well over the past 2 years. I was born in North Carolina, so I'm a Southern boy, and lived in North Carolina for the first part of my childhood, and then Detroit, Michigan, the second part of my childhood. So I got to experience 2 very different kind of places in growing up. Moved back to the Carolinas as soon as possible, as soon as I was an adult, and started working as a journalist. I moved to Charleston, I moved to Mount Pleasant, actually this very district, in 1988, and am very familiar with this area. I covered the East Cooper area for half of my career and got to know a lot of folks. And I'm very familiar with the changes that Mount Pleasant and Charleston have gone through in the past 32 years. and know what people value and the character of the folks. And I think I know how we can put a Democrat in this district, and that's through somebody that's been around and knows people, has connections, and can actually pull some Republicans to vote for him. I have Republicans that have said they're voting for me and will endorse me. So I'm looking forward to giving it a shot. I left the Post and Courier 2 years ago because of the situation with Donald Trump and his assault on truth and his assault on the environment, which is going on right now amongst this horrible pandemic that we're trying to work our way through, and on people of less privilege. I was watching. Is that it? Is that the alarm?
Thank you.
Thanks, David. And we're going to start with you on question 1. So question 1 is, what have you learned about the handling of the novel coronavirus outbreak, and how would you prepare our state for similar pandemics in the future?
Well, I might be a rare person in saying that I thought we handled it fairly okay. I think it exposed a lot of our vulnerabilities that were already there for those of us who are sensitive to them. Among them are, food security, wage security. I mean, we know as sensitive Democrats that a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck. But I think it exposed that to so many more people and underscored the importance of, living wage, underscored the importance of food security. With this pandemic, it's not unlike 9/11 and not unlike the Great Recession that we've already experienced in the 21st century. This is, round 3, and it underscores, how we really need to be better prepared for the unforeseen, whether it's terrorism or financial crashes or it could be electric grid disruptions. I think pandemics are starting to come at us more quickly. And then climate and intensified natural disasters. So I think we really need to think about our food and bring agriculture and manufacturing back to South Carolina and the United States. I think we can be making PPE in this state. We should be, we have a great state for growing all sorts of diversified crops. And I'm a big fan of expanding the hemp crop. I support medical cannabis, solar farms. I'll get into that more in the environmental section of this. We've got a lot of land that's not being used that we could be growing timber and also drawing down carbon in the atmosphere. So we've got a lot of opportunities. I keep looking at opportunities in this crisis.
Awesome. Thank you. Daniel, same question to you. What have you learned about the handling of the novel coronavirus outbreak, and how would you help prepare our state for similar pandemics in the future?
Well, I will say that we have all learned the value of good functioning government and the importance of clear, accurate information. I'm going to have to actually disagree with David a bit. I do not believe that our state was prepared for this pandemic. If you look at DHEC, DHEC had lost 20% of its infectious disease staff over the past 10 years. Look at DHEC's budget. It was, $169 million in 1998, and today it's at $107 million. So we've lost nearly $60 million in recurring funding to DHEC. So I think that we were hobbled headed into this, and without adequate testing, contact tracing, disease surveillance, people don't have the information that they need to make informed decisions. If we're going to come out of this, people need to feel safe. We can open businesses, but the customers aren't going to return until we feel safe. So I think that we need to emerge out of this with the right priorities. We need a strong public health system with modern professional infectious disease departments. We need to expand Medicaid. one of the biggest tragedies in this whole thing is that people have their health insurance attached to their jobs precisely at the same time that jobs are going away, and that's a huge problem. So I think that we need to make sure that we're not going to leave workers and small businesses behind. We need to make sure that it's an all hands on deck approach, that everybody is focused on sort of the holistic person. We have all kinds of mental health issues, educational issues that are coming out of this. And the number one way that we can prepare for this pandemic is to beef up our public health agency, DHEC.
All right, thank you. All right, so we are no strangers to sitting in traffic here in Charleston. As a state representative, what can you do to help reduce congestion? And this one goes to Daniel first.
Well, I am intimately aware of the traffic issue. A lot of the people that I work with here in Mount Pleasant are commuting 2 hours a day. I go once a week to North Charleston to take my son to hockey practice. It starts at 5:30 on Wednesday, and you better believe I've got to be out of the house at 4 to get there on time. That's a problem. I think that we need to ensure that 526 is widened. I think that we need to reconfigure the intersections, the interchanges in North Charleston, where there's a shared merge lane, most notably at Rivers and 26. It's also clear that 41 is a problem. We approved all of this growth, and we didn't have a plan for how we were going to accommodate all of the traffic that growth creates. But I think it's important to note that we can't asphalt our way out of this. I think that we need to have a vibrant public transportation system. I've been talking to some various groups in town, Best Friends of Transit. They have some really good ideas about how to bring buses along 526, along a widened 526. But the challenge is going to be the same that it is for package deliveries. It's the last couple miles. People can get within a couple of miles of their final destination, but until we're interfacing with rideshare programs and bike programs, other efforts, we're not going to have the public transportation system that we deserve.
Thank you. Okay, same question for you, David. I'll read it again. We are
You
no
don't-
strangers.
You
No?
don't need to. No.
Okay.
So yeah, Daniel's emphasizing widening roads as a big part of the solution, and in my experience in Charleston, is every time they widen a road, traffic just fills it up. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been stuck in the traffic myself. So again, the previous subject, COVID, ties right into this. And one of the things that people were still working. They were telecommuting, so we need to really focus on trying to get businesses to encourage, or we can incentivize businesses to work on telecommuting. So we're taking cars off of the road. We don't need to widen any more than we already have. One of the exciting things that the Berkeley Charleston Dorchester Council of Governments has been working on is the Low Country Rapid Transit System, and that will calls for a 26-mile bus transit system that basically goes from MUSC and the Visitor Center in downtown Charleston up the spine of Rivers Avenue and 78 to downtown Somerville. It has dedicated lanes for rapid bus transit. The goal is to have a 60-minute trip one way. You have 18 stations and an estimated, with an estimated 2 million trips per year. But the cost is going to be $360 million for the construction, and probably operating, they're estimating at 5.9. So that needs to be funded. But that's what's going to happen. And I also think that we need to start trying to get people to use mass transit and try to trick them into using it more. Like beach shuttles, there should be a shuttle to Folly Beach and to Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, that picks up removes the traffic off of the road, also bike and pedestrian infrastructure.
Great, thank you both. All right, so question 3, turning to education. We consistently rank in the bottom when it comes to education. Despite increased attention to the issue and bipartisan support in many areas, it's likely that no bills will move forward this year. What do you see as the biggest area of opportunity to create improvement? And we'll start with David on this one.
Well, we absolutely have to start with the teachers. I mean, when we're losing teachers, first-year teachers, that's a bad sign, and we're losing a lot of first-year teachers. So we need to encourage them to stay by paying them more, higher starting salary. My gut feeling and would be about $45,000 a year to start with, and then provide incentives for younger teachers to stay. And so, some idea of if they commit to 7 years to being a teacher, that they get their student loans paid off, or maybe a bonus where 5 years, and if they go and serve a rural school or a Title I urban school, so that we continue to have young, energetic teachers in the system. I agree with a lot of what Donna and Jen said in the previous about limiting funding for charter schools and absolutely no public money for private schools. We need smaller classrooms. We need more counseling for students to get them on a track that kind of suits their personality, and provide them with opportunities to say go in the construction arts. I've been inspired by seeing what's happening at the American College of Building Arts downtown. These are craftsmen. These are high value construction that we could be teaching kids early on to do, plumbing, and to do house framing, and to do, all sorts of creative things with construction. So, it's got to start with the teachers. And so I'm going to follow the lead of what the teachers say. SC, Red, and all that have lots of great recommendations.
Thanks, David. Same question to you, Daniel. I'll repeat it real quick. South Carolina consistently ranks in the bottom when it comes to education in our nation, despite increased attention to the issue and bipartisan support in many areas. It's likely no bills will move forward this year. What do you see as the biggest area of opportunity to create improvement?
Well, as the one candidate on either side that has school-age children, I will tell you that education is one of the central focuses of my campaign. I have 2 kids at Whitesides Elementary, and here in the district, we're blessed with very high-performing schools. But even in these high-performing schools, you can see that we are not funding the quality education that our kids deserve. For instance, at Whitesides, it's on the PTA to raise $150,000 a year to fund reading interventionists and the computer lab and the STEAM program, things that I would consider foundational to a quality public education. I agree with David. Our most valuable resource is certainly our teachers. Here in South Carolina, teachers start out at $29,000 a year. Charleston County does a little bit better. It starts them at $38,000 a year. But when you have teachers working 3 jobs, it's hard to expect them to be the best teacher that they can be in the classroom because they're being pulled in so many different directions. So I absolutely support raising teachers' pay. I also think that we have a terrible problem with overcrowding in our classrooms. The number of schools with 28 students or more in each classroom has nearly doubled over the past 10 years. That tells me that we do not have enough teachers. And I think this whole pandemic has really taught us or allowed us to appreciate our teachers that much more now that we're at home trying to homeschool our kids. It's a challenge, and my hats are off to these true professionals that go in there every day. I support South Carolina for Education as well. I think we need a teacher's bill of rights that tells these people, these teachers, how important they are to us, and that we have their backs.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question, it'll go to Daniel first. So far, our legislators have supported measures to support the environment with votes to make it difficult for companies to start oil exploration projects off our coast and to allow local governments to keep approving and enforcing bans on plastic bags. Do you support these measures?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that in our area is kind of unique because you see Democrats obviously opposed to offshore drilling and very pro-environment, but you also see some of that on the Republican side as well, which is a bit of an anomaly in our state. I absolutely oppose offshore drilling. I think that we need to do everything in our power to make it impossible to put the on-land infrastructure required to support it. I'm also against seismic testing. I think it's terrible for our marine life. But we have a bunch of other environmental issues in our area as well. We have water quality and flooding issues. As Donna so eloquently said earlier, we still have people on septic tanks in our district. We have a big fight over the use of ground and surface water between big industrial users like Google and homeowners like us here in Mount Pleasant. I think that we need to recognize that climate change is real. It's happening before our eyes. Anybody who's lived here for some time knows that. They know that we have flooding on days that it doesn't rain. They know that we have these persistent hurricane threats that seem to be more and more intense each year. And I'm just not convinced that anybody's looking at it from a bigger picture view. I think that we see certain areas of the state trying to go it alone on climate change. Charleston, for instance, has been very involved in studying the issue through the Dutch dialogues. Now you've got the Army Corps of Engineers recommending a $1.75 billion wall around the city. And I'm very concerned about that. I just don't know that that is the right approach. It seems when we battle Mother Nature, we tend to cause more problems than we solve. But yes, much opposed to offshore drilling, and I'm very much in favor of local communities being able to decide what they want to do with respect to a plastic bag ban.
Okay, same question for you, David. So far, our legislators have supported measures to support the environment with votes to make it more difficult for companies to start oil exploration projects off our coast and allow governments to keep approving and enforcing bans on plastic bags. Do you support these measures?
Yes, I support any measure to stop seismic testing, offshore oil drilling, and any efforts to repeal the plastic ban, which is a true threat and has been a threat. And I've been on the front lines of all of those issues. I know all the players, Samantha Siegel at Oceana and Peg Howe with SODA, which is Stop Offshore Drilling, and based in Pawleys Island. So that's a no-brainer for me. But I think on the flip side of it is we can't just be no, we need to be yes to clean energy. And we have an abundant source of sunshine in South Carolina. We have abundant wind. We need to be developing those, untapping those resources, and creating energy. We have countries in Europe and now creating all the energy they need from renewables. I think South Carolina can get there and get there quickly, but it's got political will. I also think there are an array of other environmental issues. I feel like Charleston is trying to really go overboard with the wall that Daniel was mentioning about. And I think that the dialogues talked more about creating soft surfaces that absorb, and rain barrels and cisterns that store rainwater as a resource. Again, the sun is hitting roofs, and it's not being captured. Same with rain. It's hitting roofs and pouring down onto pavement and creating flooding. So there's such an array of things, and I'll bring environmental literacy as a lifelong member of Sierra Club to the State House, and I think the environment is a winning issue to win Republicans over for us too.
Awesome. Thank you both for that. Question 5, I think this will probably be our last question for closing statements. How would you ensure that transparency and opportunities for citizen input are important in the 2021 redrawing of congressional, Senate, House, and local district lines? David, this to you.
All right. Yeah, I agree with Jen, and I think Donna when they said an independent body with politicians not drawing the lines. But regardless, we need to have clear guidelines and criteria and procedures before we start doing this. We need to conduct public hearings both before the process starts and after the lines are drawn. We need to take public comments and make them part of the record. And when I'm talking about public hearings, I'm talking about 6 or more, at least 1 in each congressional district, and then on local levels such as maybe Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester, and the metropolitan or urban planning areas. We need to limit off-the-record communications between members of the authority that redraws the line. We need a website that's open and accessible. There is legislation in the House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives right now, 131, introduced by Democrat Jim Cooper of Tennessee, called the Redistricting Transparency Act of 2019, that needs our support too. That would talk about some of the things I just mentioned. The New York University School of Law, Brennan Center for Justice has a great paper on this very subject, and I recommend everybody go to that and bone up on it before we go into this, because one of the many reasons why I wanted to run for this office to have a Democrat, whether it's Daniel Arme in there, along with Richard Rissick and all the other Democrats in Charleston County and state of South Carolina, is we got to get this right, because this has really handcuffed us in South Carolina from having fair elections for the past 10 years.
Thanks, David. Same question, Daniel. How would you ensure that transparency and opportunities for citizen input are important in the 2021 redrawing of congressional, Senate, House, and local district lines?
Well, I am absolutely opposed to gerrymandering. I think if you want to see a case study in gerrymandering, let's look at this House District 112. It is clearly drawn in a manner that benefits one group of people over another. I think that we need to make sure that whatever redistricting effort that we engage in is bipartisan. Independent would be preferred. I think that we need to follow natural boundaries, waterways, and different geographic features. I think that we need to make sure that we're not splitting apart communities. I think that one major advantage we have over the last time that we redistrict, and David alluded to it just a moment ago, is the ability to put together a very comprehensive website that uses GIS technology to show what the various proposals are and to show the demographic makeup of those proposed districts. I think that the sooner that we can get that information out to the public and then couple it with some public hearings throughout the state, that should give people enough information to where they can judge to see if we're doing this in a fair manner. I just think as a matter of principle, we are better served when every single district in our state is competitive and there's a real competition for those seats. I think it would eliminate some of the complacency that has dogged our state government for quite some time.
Great, thank you.
All right, so it's time for our closing minutes. Each candidate has 2 minutes. we will start again with Daniel. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, I think that I really appreciate you guys hosting this. You know, I think it is a valuable way for people to find out the issues. What I want to say is that no one's entitled to be the candidate or the representative. David's not entitled. I'm not entitled. The Republicans aren't, although they sure are acting like it. If you look at this district, we've been represented for 11 years by Mike Sottile. Look at what he was the primary sponsor of these past 2 years. He sponsored 6 resolutions. 4 of them were to honor local musical groups, whether it's the Wando Band or Ranky Tanky. 1 was to rename something after Joe Riley, and 1 was to honor a Wild Dunes employee. That's not the leadership that we deserve. We are a very prominent district. We have a lot of talent and resources in our district, and we need to be a thought leader in Columbia. We haven't even had a seat at the table in the past 11 years. You know, where was our representation when we were fighting tooth and nail to keep our plastic bag ban? Where was our representation when plastic pellets were washing up on the beach? Your guess is as good as mine, because I tried to get a hold of our representative on both of those issues and never heard back from him. If I'm elected, you know, you'll see me honor those local dignitaries, the Wando Band, Ranky Tank, things that I really like. But you're also going to see my name on a lot of substantial legislation. You're going to see my name attached to education reform, criminal justice reform, infrastructure reform. That's what we need in this district. I'm done. You know, we're done being taken advantage of. We are a district that's very important to this state, and I think that we need to elect somebody that's going to have a seat at the table in Columbia to get the people's business done, and somebody that's going to be responsive to their own community, both of which are sorely lacking right now. And thank you very much.
Thank you. David Quick, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, first I want to thank you guys, East Cooper Democrats. I think it's been great what you're doing, you know, with COVID and with continuing on virtually. I'm glad that Daniel brought up Mike Sottile, because Mike was probably one of the top reasons why I decided back in 2008, 18, and 19, you know, to run for this office. And lo and behold, he decides he's not going to seek re-election. I think he knew the writing was on the wall that we were coming after him, because to a person, people said, I don't know who he is. I don't know what he does. He's, you know, I could throw a Trump term at him, but I'm not going to. But anyway, I've been around. I think I might have a better chance of beating a Republican than Daniel, but if he gets the nod, I am all in for whoever, and all the Democrats in Charleston County. I look forward to winning another round. I think we really made some gains with Joe Cunningham. He's been an inspiration for all of us, and I'm hoping that by more people running, we will encourage more people to run. Charleston is turning blue. East Cooper is turning blue, and we need to represent, and we need to bring South Carolina into the 21st century. And I think the Democratic Party will have a better chance of making that progress than the folks that have been in charge since Jim Hodges was governor. And that's it.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, David. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for and then I want to thank Towner for helping me. The rest of the East Cooper Democrat leadership team, it is a group effort, and I really appreciate their help, as well as the county party. Just a reminder, our next East Cooper Democrat meeting will be virtual once again, Tuesday the 26th, and we invite all of our candidates, as always, to come so that we can hear more from you. Thank you all so much for joining. We appreciate it.